What's wrong with passive aggression? You're listening to Philosophy 24/7 with me, David Edmonds. In each episode, I talk to a leading philosopher about an issue that matters to us in our daily lives. You can listen to more interviews, join in the discussion and support us at www.philosophy247.org. No, you really don't need to listen to this podcast. I don't care one way or the other. I'm completely indifferent, honestly, because I'm not passive-aggressive, not at all. But what is passive aggression, and why is it objectionable? Rebecca Roache has been taking a cool-headed appraisal of passive aggression. Rebecca Roache, welcome to Philosophy 24/7.
Thank you for having me.
The topic we're talking about today is passive aggression. It's a phrase that's commonly used. Oh, she was very passive-aggressive. But it's not obvious what it actually means. Can you give an example?
So imagine that I'm organising a birthday party and I'm inviting you all. And while all this is going on, you do something to upset me, something fairly minor. And you sincerely apologise to me and I accept your apology, or you think I accept it, although I'm a bit frosty. And then later on you realise that you've been dropped from the Facebook discussion that we had going to organise this celebration, and it all goes ahead without you. And you think there's something strange about this, so you confront me about it, and you ask me fairly politely if I'm still upset with you. And I say, no, it's fine, everything's fine. There must have been some Facebook problem, you should have said something. And that's the end of it. So you're left feeling like you've said all that you could say about it, but you're also left feeling like there's something going on under the surface, that I'm still angry with you, but you can't discuss it anymore. You've raised it and I've dismissed it, and my explanation is on the surface plausible.
So you're angry with me. Is passive aggression then, excuse my French, the same as saying piss off?
In a way it is. So if after you'd upset me and apologised, I reacted by saying piss off in an angry way, say, what I would have conveyed to you is pretty similar to what I convey with my passive-aggressive response. I show you that I haven't accepted your apology, and I also show you that I'm contemptuous of you, I'm hostile, etc. So there's a sense in which they are pretty similar responses.
It's what philosophers, I guess, might call a speech act. If I say, I promise, that commits me to behaving in the way I promise to behave. If I say, I do during a marriage ceremony, that is a central part of the marriage ceremony. If I say piss off, that means you should be offended, and passive aggression performs the same function.
Yeah, they're both the same speech act. So this is the idea that I'm not merely communicating to you with my words, I'm performing an act. The act I'm performing in both cases, that is both the passive-aggressive response and the alternative piss-off response, is I'm showing you that I don't accept your apology, and I'm showing you also that I have certain negative feelings towards you.
I'm probably passive-aggressive sometimes, but I think when I am passive-aggressive, it's because I can't bear confrontation. And if I said piss off to you, that would lead to a confrontational situation, whereas if I'm passive-aggressive, I can somehow kind of hive it off.
Yes, exactly. So the British are maybe more passive-aggressive than a lot of people because we don't like confrontation. And passive aggression does enable us to avoid that. In passive-aggressive behaviour, there's always one interpretation according to which it's not impolite. I mean, if I drop you out of my birthday invite list, that's not necessarily impolite. I could just be wanting to omit you for good reasons, but not wanting to upset you by drawing this to your attention. And also, you've challenged me about my negative feelings towards you, and I've denied that I have them. And we very often do that, and it's viewed as perfectly polite. Like if you ask me if I think you're fat or ugly or whatever, and I say no, then we normally think that's a sort of very tactful way to behave. So that's an essential part of passive aggression. There's always one interpretation of the behaviour according to which it's, if not polite, it's not impolite.
And yet I want to communicate my offensiveness. Is that your claim, that a central component of passive aggressiveness is that you need to understand how I feel?
I think so, yes. I think ambiguity is an important part of passive aggression. So whilst there's one interpretation of the behaviour according to which I'm not being impolite, there's invariably another interpretation according to which I am being insulting or offensive or any of the other things that we are when we actually directly say piss off instead of acting passive aggressively.
But if there's ambiguity in what I'm conveying, my message is not as clear as if I just said piss off.
Exactly, yeah. So when people behave passive aggressively towards us, even when we're sort of pretty certain what's going on, there might be sort of some lingering part of us that sort of wonders whether we're being oversensitive. This is sort of often part of what we want when we're being passive aggressive. We want the person to be bothered by our behaviour.
Is intending to offend you an essential component of passive aggressiveness? Let's say I think you've behaved badly and I want nothing to do with you. And when we pass each other in the corridor, I don't say hello to you and I ignore your cheery hello to me. That's kind of aggressive, but I might not care whether you're offended or not. I might just decide that your behaviour has made you unworthy of being my friend and I just want nothing to do with you. I don't intend to offend you.
Yeah, I think there you are being disrespectful. I'm not sure whether you're being passive aggressive, because when we're being passive aggressive, we want some recognition from the audience that what we're trying to convey is offensive or insult. We want people to realise that they're being insulted.
If you're right and it is the same speech act as saying piss off, does that mean they are morally on a par? Does that mean one is no more offensive than the other?
No. It's important not only which speech act we perform, but how we perform it. So if I want you to pass me the salt, I can either say, "Excuse me, David, please would you mind passing me the salt?" Or I can say, "David, pass the sodding salt, would you?" And I'm performing the same speech act with both. I'm sort of signalling to you that I want the salt and I want you to help me out here. But only one of those ways is polite and only one is offensive. The speech act that I'm performing isn't the beginning and the end of the offensiveness. It's also important how I perform it.
So it's possible that passive aggressive behaviour is not as offensive as outright swearing at somebody.
I think that's a pervasive view. So the fact that we often behave passive aggressively in situations where we wouldn't be willing to swear, we would be afraid of swearing, that suggests that we think that what we're doing is something less offensive. But I actually think it's unclear that passive aggression is less offensive than swearing. I think it's more offensive than we commonly think it is.
Why?
Well, we've already noted that we can use passive aggression to perform the same speech act that we can perform with swearing in some instances. It seems obvious to us that performing it in a sweary manner is offensive because we all know that swearing can offend people. What makes us think that passive aggression is less offensive than swearing is this ambiguity that's inherent in passive aggressive behaviour. So the fact that there's always an interpretation according to which the behaviour is polite or not impolite. So whilst it has this innocuous interpretation, it also has a more offensive interpretation. If you know that I'm trying to provoke you or insult you by behaving passive aggressively, then that's the interpretation you use. What we do when we're passive aggressive is try to convey to our audience the offensive interpretation. We want them to know that we're annoyed with them. But if challenged, we can retreat to the more innocuous interpretation. We can say things like, "Oh gosh, you're being oversensitive, it was all a mistake, you've misunderstood me," and so on. And I think that by doing that, we deprive our audience of the opportunity to challenge our behaviour, and we try to escape accountability for it. So what we're aiming at is a sort of risk-free way of insulting people. We want to give people an insult, but without taking any responsibility for it.
So it might be equally offensive, but it has this added factor of depriving the other person of a chance to make amends, for example.
Yes, exactly. And often it doesn't even get that far. So when we recognise that somebody is behaving passive-aggressively towards us, we might realise what's going on and think, well, I'm not even going to try to challenge this behaviour because I know that this person is just going to play ignorant. So I don't say anything. This is never discussed. And so that means that I'm silenced. I lose the opportunity to discuss with you your negative feelings towards me. And also you lose the chance to have your grievances discussed, possibly sympathetically. You lose sort of any sort of cathartic benefit that you might have got from expressing yourself directly. And that's not very satisfying. You know, when we have negative feelings, it's nice to have some sort of catharsis.
Given the choice then between saying piss off and being passive-aggressive, I should say piss off.
Most of us will be really unwilling to do that. But I think that that's in part due to the fact that we don't realise how objectionable we're being when we're being passive-aggressive. One way to look at this is that we often have to strike a balance between expressing our feelings and being inoffensive. And sometimes expressing our negative feelings can be offensive. So what we have to do sometimes is kind of work out whether we want to express ourselves or whether we want to remain inoffensive. So if you tell me to piss off, you have prioritised expressing your feelings over sort of ensuring that I'm not offended. I mean, obviously, this doesn't take part in sort of a rational, conscious, deliberative sort of manner. But, you know, often when we're in the grip of strong emotions, we will express ourselves and we'll sort of worry later about whether we're being offensive. And sometimes we'll do the opposite. You know, we'll swallow our feelings and we'll just sort of on the surface be calm and polite. And that can be beneficial because, you know, we haven't done any harm to anybody, we haven't offended anyone, but we have lost the opportunity to have our feelings dealt with. But I think what we do when we're passive-aggressive is we get the worst of both worlds. So we are behaving objectionably because we are doing a disservice to our audience, we're silencing them, we are insulting them without being prepared to take responsibility for our behaviour. And also we are depriving ourselves of the sort of cathartic satisfaction of expressing our negative feelings. So we are neither getting the expressive benefit of swearing, nor are we getting the sort of very polite and inoffensive behaviour that we might get from sort of genuinely swallowing our bad feelings and just behaving politely.
Rebecca Roache, I'll try and check my passive-aggressive instincts from now on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
You were listening to Philosophy 24/7 with me, David Edmonds. You can follow me on Twitter at DavidEdmonds100. That's David Edmonds 100. If you're able to support us, you can find out how to do so at our website, www.philosophy247.org.